This will probably only be about 20-30 minutes long, and then you can do a Q&A and then wrap it up. And it's better for me to stand right here on this side.
Yeah, let's do that side right
Okay.
there. That's perfect.
Awesome. All right, so my name is Daniel Murray, and I'm a chiropractor here in San Antonio, Texas. I'm also an avid gardener, a real estate investor. I've got lots of hobbies. I've just always enjoyed trying new things, and I'm not afraid to experiment, as you're about to see. So when I started gardening, I found YouTube to be a great source of information. And as you know, you go down a rabbit hole, and I ended up watching these videos about natural swimming ponds, which are more popular in Europe. And there's a gentleman named David Butler, who has a company that actually builds these ponds. And so I watched all his videos, and I just thought, this is absolutely amazing. I have to try this. So I ordered his, he had a little video series, instructional series that taught you how to do it. I think it was like $100, and watched the videos and got to work. So I'm going to show you guys how I did it. Step one, we're going to go step by step. So step one is hire cheap labor. So this was, let's see, in 2016, 7 years ago, Jeffrey was 12. And so we went to Sunbelt Rentals, and the smallest excavator that they had was the only one that would fit through the hole in the fence. So that's the one we got. And it went down to about 6 feet. So we had a great time. It was a lot of fun getting to use that machine. So step two, of course, start digging. And I had just a tiny little house in Converse, and it already had a slab on it for the back patio, just a slab, no roof covering or anything. So decided to bump it right up against it so that it would have a beach-like feeling. That was the whole idea, is I wanted to sit on my back porch and just have a nice view. So we kept on digging, and I had chickens at the time, and when we started digging, we started finding all these worms. And I'm talking about these night crawlers that were like 12 inches long. I'd never seen worms so big. But once we got down to about 2 or 3 feet, we found them. We were feeding them to the chickens. So the chickens very quickly figured out if we were out there digging, they wanted to be around. So they were always hovering around the hole and waiting to be fed worms. And we found those huge grub worms. I think they're Japanese beetle larvae, and they love the project.
I hope you have those chickens still.
No.
With the price of eggs.
Yeah, no, we had possum attacks. The chickens did great until I installed a automatic door that had a photovoltaic sensor. And so I thought, well, I don't have to worry about cooping them up anymore. They know I'd had them 6 months. They knew where home was. But there was one chicken that got hot, and so she kept her head, actually her body, right in the middle of the door frame. She slept on the threshold, so the door would gently, it's a little piece of aluminum, really thin, but she would lay there so it wouldn't close all the way. I think it was because they were getting hot. I'm not sure. Maybe she just wanted to see the view. Well, a possum came along, and that was it. She let him in the coop. So there's 2 zones in a natural pond. There's a shallow area that you can plant in, and then there's a deeper water zone. So you can kind of see the frames, and then eventually you'll see that the planted zone ends up being, there's a shallow portion all the way around. That's the planted zone. This ends up being the beach, and then also planted zone on the sides. So to keep everything orderly, I went ahead and framed it up, and that helped me work on the design aspect as well. So this is the deep water portion, or deep end, and The excavator got down to about 6 feet, like I mentioned. I wanted to be able to completely submerge myself in the water, and I'm 6'3", so I decided I'm gonna make this thing 7 feet deep. So I hand dug the last foot, which was not that much fun, really, not as fun as the excavator. And then framed in the footing first, and you'll see I built up a block wall. So this is just all the framing. So everything was going good through step 5. And went ahead and poured the footing. So just regular concrete, added some rebar, made sure it was nice and strong. And then disaster struck. It rained and caved in all the way around. The the entire pond was full. You can see it eroded and just mud was all over the place. When the water finally dried up, I saw that about 2 feet of dirt had gone back on top of the concrete footing. So I dug out the last 2 feet again, so went from 5 feet to 7 feet. And developed lateral epicondylitis, which is the medical term for tennis elbow, because I did this like 5,000 times. Luckily, I had a massage therapist that I worked with and referred to who was able to knock it out in one visit, which was pretty impressive. So I got back to digging. I uncovered the foundation and was ready to set my block. Then it rained again.
Oh.
That must have been a long time ago.
This was in 2016. Yeah, 2016. So again, same exact thing happened. And I literally thought about, you know what, just scrapping the project and filling it all in. Like, it was depressing because that's, digging all that out 3 times was getting annoying. So
Was it after like all that hail and stuff? Like those big hailstorms that came through that spring and like did, I don't know how many millions of dollars in damage, like in May, it was around Fiesta.
was it that was 2017?
No, that was 2016.
No, this would have been, I started this in the fall of 2016, but it took me about a year. So this would have been spring of 2017. Yes. So I considered giving up, really just sat on it while the water was slowly evaporating and just decided I'm going to keep going. But this time I did something a little different. I didn't dig it out until I was absolutely ready to build this retaining wall. So I thought, okay, I'm going to wait until I have a long weekend. So I waited to Labor Day or Memorial Day, whichever one. I think Labor Day's in the spring.
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. I waited till Memorial Day weekend. I said, this is all I'm doing. I'm going to dig this sucker out and I'm going to build this wall this weekend. In case it rains, it will retain all of the dirt. So pretty simple brickwork. I just got the, blocks from Home Depot. And this is, I think, the first masonry job I'd ever really done. And it's not easy. I learned masonry work is not easy, but it turned out okay. And it did rain again, but luckily I already had the retaining wall built and a little bit of runoff got in there, but again, I was able to get in there and easily clean it out. And so framed it up again, and now you can see the pond taking shape. This will eventually end up being the planted zone, shallow end, and then deep end, and then I'll end up building that up a little more. So one thing I did to help keep the design all square, and again, trying to prevent any flooding or erosion, was frame it up a little bit higher and put some foam boards all the way around it. And then the next step was carpet. So the pond liner, if I remember correctly, was like $500 or $600, and I did not want to puncture it. So I found this carpet store off of Pure and Vital, and they had a huge 40-yard dumpster out back with just a bunch of carpet. So I pulled up, took the kids and said, "Hey, we're going dumpster diving." Yay! Of course, I love that. So I was in the dumpster just throwing rolls of carpet into the back of the truck. So that was cool because it was a material that would have ended up in the landfill. So got to repurpose it, which I felt good about. And then I added a couple of layers around the deep end to cover that block. So that's multiple layers. Hello, welcome. Come on in. So the pond liner was special ordered from Water Garden Gyms. They didn't have it on hand, but they were able to get it ordered in.
Is that local here?
Yeah.
I know.
Water Garden Gyms is off of I-10. I think it's in Seguin.
But a little bit before you get to the game.
Yeah, kind of like in
There's
between
10,
shirts.
it's right in the middle of the construction,
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I tell you.
maybe in between shirts and Seguin. On the north side of 10. So you can see the chicken coop. Chickens are contained back there. And of course, I ordered much bigger than I needed just to make sure it would fit, because I definitely didn't want to try to glue anything together. But it turned out to be the right size. Thank goodness. That sucker was heavy too. So more free materials. So if you're still to this day, even though this was 7 years ago now, if you drive up 281 on the side of the highway, you see all this rock that they pull up. So I was driving by there while I was building this and thought, you know what? I don't think anybody would mind if I just pulled over and lighten their load and help myself to some of these rocks. So I just kept filling up my truck until I had what I needed, and built it, as you can see, a huge bed of mortar right on top of the retaining wall, and then just started stacking the rock on top of that. You'll notice 3 PVC pipes. There will be 6 total, 3 on each side, and that's part of the biofilter, which we'll talk about it a little bit later or right now. So step 17 was the biofilter build. So you can see the rock wall is completed. So now the deep end is even higher. And the idea here is you have perforated pipe that goes all the way through the shallow end. I threw down some gravel, pea gravel, put the piping all the way around. There's 3 more, so the piping will extend on both sides. And then I bought the highest horsepower aquarium pump that I could buy, that I could find, and I put air stones. So, and later on you'll see there's I put an elbow on these and dropped air stones and ran hoses. So the idea is the air pulls through these corrugated pipes. And of course, there's gravel on top of these and plants planted in the gravel. So it creates this circular motion that's constantly sucking materials down into the gravels where the bacteria break them down, and along with the plants, and then pushes the clean water back out into the deep end. So it's constantly circulating, and it's literally just a 110 plug and a strong aquarium air filter.
Where's the pump at, or the filter?
That is the filter. So just the gravel sitting on top of these corrugated pipes.
And
So that's it.
The air stones. You said you had to plug something in.
Right. So I had an aquarium pump just off to the side and ran plastic tubing to each one of these and put an air stone in each PVC pipe. So it created like a vacuum. So you can see the pumps off here to the side. You see the little plastic pieces, and they're already bubbling up. So the gravel covers the pipes. Eventually this will be planted, and it's just constantly cycling the water through. And the gravel is a perfect media for bacteria, beneficial bacteria that breaks down the nitrates and nitrites. So
Are those pumps like in watts, or are they in like horsepower, you know? Remember?
I think it was just a little like half horsepower pump. Yeah, I think like a 0.5 horsepower. So you can still see the carpet at this point. But yeah, pretty basic stuff. And then of course the water, when we put the gravel in, of course it was all muddy, so the water wasn't clear, but we still got in there. You can see Davey in his underoos, and this was the most exciting part for me, that I could actually go completely underwater. So mission accomplished. And then I made a huge mistake. So I'm always trying to do stuff on the cheap and get things free and recycle materials. So I thought, you know what, instead of going to water gyms or some other, you know, professional plant store or pond store, I'm just going to go down to the local lake and get all these plants from the pond and dig them up, and or just pick them out and bring them home. So that's what I started doing. Well, it turns out one of the species that I put in there was invasive and just grew like overnight. The entire pond was just full of these things. And so I looked it up on the internet, you know, after the fact, and it's like, do not.
Some kind of water lettuce?
I don't even remember what it was, to be honest with
See,
you.
my
But
fish eat all that.
yeah, I put it in there. Then I looked it up, and it was like on the top 10 most wanted list. Like if you go in the pond store, this is what you see on the poster: do not plant. So in retrospect, if I do this over again, I'm definitely going to consult a professional before I start planting, because I just grabbed whatever was in it was Live Oak Park in Commerce. That's where I harvested the plants.
Be
So-
interesting, not interesting, but it would really suck if you like brought in like what they refer to as zebra mussels. And zebra mussels found in a
I
neighborhood.
wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. But this is where it really started to get fun. You know, doing the borders, planting all around it. You'll see in probably the next slide or so that my garden is off to the side, and it really started to all integrate together and started to look good, minus the invasive species that were taking over. So I started building out a concrete pad. I built a little dock, which you'll see in the next couple of slides. The water started to get really clear. You can notice that my patio is still open at this point. And later on.
And you planted in the pea gravel?
Yes, planted directly in the pea gravel. So the kids wanted more and more fun things to do. So we ended up adding a slide. I think I got that like for $20 off of Facebook Marketplace, and built that out, built the dock. What else? Oh, dug in a trampoline. So the kids had a blast out here. And grown-ups too. So we started to enjoy it. Even though it was tiny, we were in it every weekend. I mean, the kids had an absolute blast. I would have friends over, you know, even my adult friends are like, we want to come over and swim in the pond. And we did. And I'll tell you, it was quite an experience. Really cool stuff. So I just continued to experiment with it. After the first couple of years, the kids kind of got to where it wasn't novel, it wasn't as fun anymore. So I started to experiment with putting, you know, fish in it and letting it grow more wild, which was really cool. And then you can't really see it, but I ended up building a covering over my patio and put on a metal roof. And so all the rainwater would flow from my house onto the metal roof and into the pond. So once I put the metal roof on, I never had to fill it up again. It would get low, it would rain, it would fill up again. So never added water after that. So that's one of the things that I actually did right and would repeat is, you know, trying to create a situation where you can capture rainfall so that you're not having to constantly replenish it. The other thing that I did wrong is I didn't make it big enough. if I had it to do over again, I probably would at least double, maybe even triple the size. Just because this one was kind of tiny. I think it was maybe 12 feet wide and 6 feet across, and then roughly 7 feet deep. The depth was okay, but I could lay out and almost touch the sides. So the other really cool thing, it reminded me of the Field of Dreams movie with Kevin Costner, Build It and They Will Come. The wildlife that started to come into my backyard was actually absolutely amazing. There were all kinds of birds, frogs, toads, snakes, possums, raccoons. I mean, there was just constantly some sort of animal in the backyard drinking out of the water, birds bathing themselves. The only downside is a couple nights out of the year when the woodhouse toads were mating, my backyard or my bedroom backed up to this pond, and I built French doors and a little patio because I thought, oh, this is so nice. In the spring, I can open it up. And anyways, I didn't have much of a sound barrier. And when those things were mating, I mean, it was like, I had to go sleep in the other room, like literally had to go sleep in the front room because it was so loud. They were doing their thing. But outside of those couple of nights, it was actually really nice. And then, okay, so here you can kind of see the rooftop, and it's amazing how little rainfall you would need to fill up the pond again. And built my 4x4 raised beds and just got after it. And that was a great garden. Once I finished out the backyard, I moved to the front yard. So this lot, my goal, in addition to building the pond, the overall goal was to have no grass whatsoever, to make everything either edible or something that was beneficial to pollinators. So I just slowly ripped out all the grass, started planting mostly vegetables. And yeah, great experience. These are all pallets I just cut up and made into a path. So again, just trying to use materials that might have been thrown away or otherwise discarded. This was the house used to flood in the front when it rained. So I built I just dug a trench and built a French drain of sorts, and then had you guys have one too. It's a wet dry pond,
Like a rain garden.
Rain garden, exactly. So yeah, nothing edible over there, but just tried to take advantage of what was already happening around the property, and things that were a problem I tried to turn into something that was beautiful and beneficial, for the animals and insects. In closing, so this is when I was first starting my practice. I had just graduated from graduate school, had a lot of debt, didn't have a lot of money, but had a lot of time on my hands. And so we were doing fun stuff like this, like we were talking about earlier. We camped a lot, we fished a lot. We did crazy things like building a pond. So we were always digging in the backyard. And recently, my youngest son, who's now 12 and has absolutely no filter, said to me, "Dad, you're boring now." I said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, like we don't ever camp anymore. We don't, and because now I can afford to actually like pay for a hotel or a cabin or something. So we don't. And plus, I'm to the point now where I don't really want to sleep on the ground anymore because I have my own back issues." And he said, "Well, you were just a lot more fun when you were broke." And it was like, "Oh, son, you got me." But it was a great reminder that, happiness doesn't come from having everything you want, it doesn't come from money. And I know my kids will look back on the things we did like this, over, oh, we went and stayed at a hotel and had this, fun vacation. I think these are the memories that they're really going to make. So for everybody here and anybody that watches this, I hope you'll take some time to play in the dirt and spend some time with the kids. And ironically, just about a week after he said that, I started coaching his basketball team, which is a good feeling. And hopefully I'm redeeming myself and not becoming the stick in the mud who's not broken fun anymore. So that's all I got. Thank you.
I have
Any
a question.
questions?
Yeah, I have a question about the
Yep.
digging. So did you just call 811 to mark the water and gas lines?
Everything runs from the front.
Oh,
So-
so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, it was all run from the front. And
Okay.
yeah, nothing. Yeah, everything ran to the street. There's no alley.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's nothing running underneath.
Okay.
But yeah, I would if I didn't know where they were running already. That would be a good idea.
Yeah, because our water and gas, I know our water, I'm pretty sure our gas lines run from the back, and we do have an alley. I just had a main water line break actually, so I had to fix that. So now I know sort of where it's running. It's interesting with the copper. You would think it's just a straight line, but like our copper is like wiggling.
Oh, really?
So it's not just like a straight shot
Wow.
from the meter. I assume there's some point where it eventually gets straight, but like from where the meter, it turns like 90 and it goes this way. So because I wanted to do something, I want to do like a Zen garden in my backyard, the botanical gardens.
Mhm.
If y'all seen that Zen garden,
Yeah.
they have that nice little pond. So I want to try to do a little recreate that.
Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would definitely, if I didn't know exactly where the lines were running, then I would definitely call first. And that's a free service. I mean, they come out and do it just so you don't bust their pipes. Yeah.
That's a requirement for us if you're under a contract and you have to go in a certain depth for liability issues.
Yeah.
Because there's people that will, especially in San Antonio, I mean, with property that sells so frequently. You have buyers that don't know where their lines are at, and that could be a very, very serious, it's a very serious issue with possible, death.
One of my neighbors he was doing some excavating and he hit the gas line and the fire department, the police department. It was
Yikes.
they had to tear it
Whole
all
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you do with all the extra soil?
Oh, so, okay, so this tree, the first, so I did a hugelkultur mound.
Okay.
This was a huge tree that I felled and I just let it lay parallel to the fence line. And I just mounted all the dirt on top of that and then ended up, I don't know if it's in any of the pictures.
That must have been a huge Hugel mound.
It was gigantic. It was probably 6 feet tall.
Oh,
Nice.
Oh yeah, you see all that back there?
Uh-huh.
Mostly like zucchini and squash.
Oh.
Oh yeah, you can see it right there. I just planted and that's the first hugelkultur mound that I had ever done, and it works. I never had to water that stuff.
Yeah.
And I would kind of forget about it, especially the part behind the mound. Like nobody ever went back there. But when we did to do like an annual cleanup, we'd find like huge acorn squash and stuff that we just missed and never picked. So it's kind of a little wild part of the garden. But yeah, that was, you definitely have to plan what you're going to do with the soil because once you pull it out of the ground, it expands like 3 or 4 times. But luckily, I had that idea of I wanted to do a hugelkultur mound anyway, so we just threw that dirt on top of that tree and all the branches and let it decay and water and feed those plants. And I was impressed. I would definitely do a hugelkultur mound again.
What is that?
So there was a gentleman, I think it was Sweden, who created, and I forget his name. I think it's Sven. It's been a while, but if you YouTube hugelkultur, I think it's HUGELKULTURE, I believe. There's a gentleman that had this land that he bought this land on the side of a mountain in Sweden, and everybody said, there's no way you can farm here. And he actually did a combination of water, ponds and hugelkultur, and created this garden paradise where nobody had been successful before. And what he was doing was using the water to trap heat and then lining lining those ponds with hugelkultur mounds. So even though people said, oh, it's too cold up in the mountains, the sun would shine down on the water and create these little biozones where he was successful in gardening. So it's a really cool concept that I wanted to try out. And the thought is that if you put a bunch of tree trunks and limbs and branches and then cover them up with dirt, as the wood decays, it releases nutrients and water, so you don't ever have to fertilize, and your water requirements are a lot less. And I found that to be true.
So it just keeps it in the right down. I won't remember.
Yeah, it says the first term was published in 1962, German gardening booklet by Hermann Andra.
Oh, I was way off.
And
You
then it
got the
was,
name wrong, the country wrong.
it was further developed by Sepp Holzer in Austrian permaculture.
Okay, that's what I was saying.
What
Still
was the
wrong
word?
on both counts.
What was the
but-
origin? Austria?
Well, Hugel culture means like a mound
German.
in German.
Oh, German.
But
Rainbow
it's-
Gardens
Wooden
did have a
dirt mound.
demonstration.
What's that?
Rainbow Gardens had a demonstration project with
Yeah.
that a while back. I don't know if it's still there or not.
Yeah, it's basically just
The
throw
mound
a
is-
bunch of tree branches down, cover it with dirt, plant on top of it. I mean, that's what I did. It worked out.
Interesting.
Yeah, natural fertilizer and water release.
Yeah.
So. And for me, it was cool because I didn't have to haul the tree up to the front. I just literally felled it and covered it up with the dirt from the pond.
I
So,
did that with like my Christmas tree.
yeah, well, you made a whole culture mound.
Yeah, I did that with my Christmas tree. I was like, I'm not gonna haul this thing to the land, put it in my backyard. And that's what I did.
Nice. Other questions?
Did like, when you put up the extension, I guess the roof where you started harvesting the water to replenish the pond, were you using that water for anything else?
No, it just went straight into the pond or it ran off into the garden. But I built my garden right up to the roof line. It spanned the whole yard. And I brought in just tons of mulch. I mean, every year, yards and yards at a time. And so when it would rain, it would all run under the mulch and into the mulch, and it would just soak it up. So this property had a lot of water issues until I started doing all these things. And then, it's kind of like any other wetland or area that can soak in a bunch of water. So the water issues disappeared.
Do you think, was it because it was a lack of vegetation at that point?
It was just grass before.
Yeah.
And the soil was, just clay and pretty terrible. So I just put cardboard, again, just cardboard that I've sourced. I don't even remember where I was getting it from. Oh, I do. I would go behind Lowe's. This was in Converse. I went to the Lowe's at 35 and O'Connor, and they would just throw all their appliance boxes outside, and they wouldn't even break them down. So I'd go back there, break them down, throw them in my truck, and hit the road. So, I mean, one refrigerator box, once you open it 4-fold, will cover half of this room. So, 10 of those, and my whole backyard was covered in cardboard. Just laid it right on top of the grass, and then started bringing the mulch in. And the garden boxes, the raised beds, I would put a third compost, third humus, and third composted cow manure, which is a kind of a play on the square foot gardening guy. He does vermiculite, but that stuff is so expensive. So it's like $100 a bag, and that was 7 years ago. I can't imagine what it is now. So I switched out the vermiculite.
I'm wondering, it's
Mulch
because
around it.
like you had clay, I mean, the particles in clay are so small, that the soil particles, and that's what they're for, it's to retain water.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have anything else, like a loamy type soil with bigger pores that don't allow the water to drain.
I guess
So,
it definitely was not easy digging, so I'm pretty sure it was a lot of clay.
mm,
If I hadn't had that backhoe in the beginning, it would have taken me like 10 years instead of one.
How many times did you have to rent the
Just
backhoe?
once.
Just for a day? You dug it off?
We had it, I think we had it 2 or 3 days,
Okay.
but I was also letting my 12-year-old run it and we had fun with it. So
Yeah.
I think if, a grown man or woman all day could get it done, but we were just poking along.
How much did that pond liner cost you?
I think it was 500 or 600 just
Oh.
with the liner.
And how did you determine the how big it needed to be?
I went to Water Garden Gyms
Okay.
and gave them all my measurements and they did the math for me and we ordered it. I think my all in on this project was about, I think it was 3,000 to 4,000. So, I mean, it's a significant amount of money, but at the same time, if you were to pay somebody to build a water feature of this size, I think it would be
Minimum 8,000.
3, 4.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
that.
I know, it's about like
$5,000.
8 now, if there's any
Yeah.
excavation.
Yeah, I believe
They were
it.
talking about that at their seminar last weekend.
Yeah, and since I did it on my own in over a year, it wasn't a big financial hit. And like I said, I tried to use as many recycled materials as I could, to save on costs a little bit.
How did it hold up with the freeze?
We had a real big snow and I didn't have any issues. Yeah. Yeah, like I say, the bigger the body of water, the more heat it holds. And so now I wasn't there during snowpocalypse last year. I ended up selling this property 2 years later in 2019 and moving on. And it's funny, my realtor, he would come over to my house and I knew I would sell this home because the kids were getting bigger. It's 3-bedroom. I have 3 kids, so the boys had to share. And I knew we were outgrowing the home. And my buddy and also my realtor would come over and I'd say, "Hey, Ron, what do you think about this?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna have to sell the house in a couple of years. What do you think?" And he's like, This is crazy. I don't think anybody's gonna want to buy this." And I said, "Okay, that's your professional opinion. What do you think personally?" And he said, "Keep going. This is awesome. I don't care if anybody buys the house." And the funny thing is, we sold it off market. And we put a coming soon sign. Somebody from the neighborhood had been watching the house. They called, they walked it and they bought it.
That's cool.
So it opened both of our eyes to the fact that there's a lot of like-minded people that want to, get rid of grass and have gardens and natural ponds and systems that don't really exist or aren't as common. So that was an eye-opener that you can kind of go nuts and do whatever you want to do. And if you do it right and do it well, then there's somebody out there that'll pick up the property.
I think particularly in San Antonio, it's moved in that direction by the last 5-7 years with the urban agricultural movement.
Yeah.
And so I know we get a lot of calls at the office, but when it comes down to it, like when San Antonio got had its tricentennial year, the city of San Antonio pledged to plant 300 pollinator gardens in the city of San Antonio. And they sure did. And so I think there's definitely a lot of support from the community in these types of projects to do them. And I know we have publications for things that you can do in even like in apartment settings or whatever, that there shouldn't be any kind of limitations to those kinds of projects, and how you can further kind of increase, the habitat or ecosystems or anything like that. You shouldn't be restricted just by where you live, even if it is a neighborhood, a traditional neighborhood for that matter.
Yeah, I'm working with the city on doing some what they call alternative construction methods. It's an earthship, if you're familiar with that. And it's the first couple meetings have been all positive. They're very open to it. They're actually I think the new code book that they're adopting this year has a whole section on alternative building materials. So, and they said, hey, we're open to this. Like we want to allow this type of thing to occur. So that's been promising. So I'm hoping we'll see more of this in the future. Yeah, all these birds and bees and critters need a place to drink and swim and bathe. And so hopefully some of you guys will build one of these.
And you never had to use any chemicals.
No, no, never. No, just rainwater. And my German Shepherd Bear, I should have thrown a picture of him. When I got him as an 8-week-old puppy, he just lived in that pond. I mean, he literally would just sit in there and drink like this. And he's been one of the healthiest, happiest dogs. And I think he was 2. He was pretty much full grown when we left there. And he's just been such a great dog. And sometimes I wonder if his good health is in part due to the fact that he grew up drinking rainwater the first 2 years of his life. I mean, just, and well, the other thing he figured out is if he scared a chicken, they would drop an egg sometimes. So when he was about 1.5 years old, the chicken stopped producing eggs. And I thought, this is the weirdest thing. And then a couple of days later, I saw him flinch at a chicken and an egg popped out and he ate it. And I thought, well, there's where all my eggs are gonna go.
High protein diet.
So yeah, he's swimming and drinking nothing but rainwater, eating organic, farm fresh eggs. He had a great childhood.
And now river water, right?
Yeah.
Now river water.
Now river water. Yeah.
So you never had to go back in and maintain and clean your
Oh, yeah,
filtration system?
yeah,
Or how did you do that?
Oh, I just got in there,
No, but where you buried the pipes? So
Oh,
you had to-
no, I never had to disturb that.
Okay.
So the mistake I made with the plants was, obviously getting those rapid growing
Mhm.
invasive species. So if and when I do this again, I would be very, very selective about the plants because you could, if I left it alone for 3 months, that entire thing would be full of whatever this is. The
See, my
devil's-
one
the devil's
koi-
lettuce.
My one koi eats everything.
Yeah,
Eats the vegetation. He doesn't, some stuff, a few things he doesn't buy, but anything that was floating, he's on it.
yeah.
So,
No, I never had enough. I did put a handful of koi in there, but I never had enough to fight off the vegetation. So probably about once a season, I would get in there and just start ripping stuff out, throw it in the
Okay.
compost pile. The chickens loved that. They would eat whatever that was.
You need to show us a picture of your chicken coop. I think it even had a chandelier in there.
Yeah, I didn't have those, unfortunately, but yeah, the chicken coop was pretty fancy.
It was really snazzy.
I buy old homes and fix them up. I've been doing that for over 20 years. So when I find a cool chandelier, I'll throw it in my garage. And so I built this chicken coop. I thought, well, these are some fancy ladies. Might as well live it up. So yeah, done all kinds of weird stuff. Any other questions?
So, yes,
Yes,
what causes it to circulate? You're not pumping.
just a vacuum. So when you drop, so let's see, what's the best picture to show that? Okay, so there's a T right here, and the stone is at the bottom, the air stone is at the bottom. So the air goes straight up this pipe and then creates a vacuum that causes the water to suck up and go out through that top of that pipe. So it's constantly pulling water down through the planted zone, shallow zone, and then out into the deep end, and then just over and over and over again. And that was enough to keep it clean. I mean, you could, unless somebody jumped in there and really stirred it up, you could always see to the bottom. It's 7 feet deep.
The plants, like, that's why our agency, our agency is really supportive of having bare areas in vegetation because they're natural filters.
Mm,
And so like their roots are naturally filtering out all the sediment and things like that. So by the time, you know, it reaches and is in the area where it starts seeping, the water's already pretty clear.
Here's the gentleman, so this is a huge one that David Butler built in the UK, I believe. This one's like an Olympic size natural swimming pond. And that's the website, organicpools.co.uk. That's where I learned. So if you're really serious about trying this, I would buy his course. At the time, I don't know what it is now, but back then it was like $99, and it had, I mean, step-by-step process. So I literally just followed exactly what he said to do, and it worked out. And he's got some really cool, like if you YouTube David Butler, search him up. He's got some really cool projects. I mean, he's built some monster swimming ponds. So that was the inspiration, but my budget and the size of my backyard limited me to, you know, a smaller one. But if I ever do it again, I would definitely go big, something like that, and really, you know, push the limits, so to speak. So fun project. I couldn't imagine what that pond liner costs though.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
$4,000. Yeah, might even be cheaper just to cement the whole thing, paint it kind of like a pool, and then just not use chemicals. I don't know. Well, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up. If there's no more questions, I've got basketball practice in about 45 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.
And
Appreciate
thank
it.
you as well. We're hopefully going to do this once a month on Wednesdays. We're looking at setting up the rest of our schedule, so stay tuned for future opportunities and locations to